Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
I got a thing about chickens.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, the world's greatest horror movie podcast. On this episode, my weird dad and his friends will be talking about...
Few films have ever created this much anticipation. Believe everything you've heard, because nothing can prepare you for the ending of Angel Heart. Are you afraid?
Yeah, I'm afraid.
Mickey Rourke, Robert DeNiro, Lisa Bonet. Angel Heart, rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
Hello and welcome to Wake Up Heavy, Recollections of Horror. This is Mark Begley, your host. Returning to the show for the umpteenth time is the host of the Projection Booth podcast, Mike White.
I got a thing about chickens.
And making his first appearance on the show is Mr. Pulp Serenade himself, Cullen Gallagher.
Howdy, and thank you for having me on.
Today on the show, we will be discussing the 1987 horror noir classic Angel Heart, written and directed by Alan Parker. The film is based on William Hjortsberg's 1978 novel Falling Angel. Mickey Rourke plays Harry Angel, a private detective in 1955 New York City, tasked with finding missing crooner Johnny Favorite by the mysterious Louis Cyphre, played by Robert DeNiro. From the icy streets of Harlem to the muggy swamps of New Orleans, Harry encounters a doped-up doctor, Favorite's old bandmates, swindling preachers, feckless lawyers, Coney Island carnies, Johnny's daughter, Bayou rednecks, racist cops, and possibly even Old Scratch himself. But can Harry find Johnny without losing himself in the process? The film also stars Lisa Bonet as Epiphany Proudfoot, Charlotte Rampling as Margaret Krusemark, Dann Florek as Herman Winesap, and Pruitt Taylor Vince as Detective Deimos. Cullen, when was the first time you saw Angel Heart, and what did you think?
I originally heard about the movie kind of late. It was about 15 years ago when Centipede was reissuing the novel. I had been following that imprint because they did a bunch of Frederick Brown and David Goodis. I decided to wait to see the movie until I read the book. Unfortunately, I didn't get to the book until recently, so a couple of years ago, I just sat down and watched the movie, not knowing anything about the plot or the ending, and I loved the atmosphere, I loved the story, the setting. I thought Mickey Rourke was fantastic. And then I got to the ending, which really threw me. I kind of, by the time the twist ending was revealed, I had sort of figured out what was going to happen. It really took me out of the story, and I had to think about, oh, does this make logical sense? Did I miss any clues? Was it playing fair? How does this reinterpret the narrative? And I knew I wanted to read the book. I knew I wanted to revisit the movie, knowing the ending to see how that would change things for me. So I really loved this opportunity. And so I went back, I read the book, which I thought is terrific, and rewatched the movie. And I still kind of had the same reaction this time around, which is everything up until the ending I adore. The ending still doesn't quite make sense to me, and I'm really hoping that through this conversation it will make a little more sense to me, because I really want to understand the ending. But it's a fantastic movie. I really, I enjoy it.
And Mike, how about you?
Well, this was quite a firestorm when we were growing up. All the controversy around this film, I think a lot of it had to do with just Lisa Bonet being, not necessarily America's sweetheart, but one of America's most well-known children because she was on The Cosby Show. So I saw this when I was probably, 16 or 17 whenever it hit video. And I knew two things about it. I knew Lisa Bonet gets naked, and I knew that Robert De Niro gives a great performance. Well, you're not in for a good time if you're here for Robert De Niro and for Lisa Bonet getting naked, because Lisa Bonet getting naked is like way into the movie. It takes a long time before you get there. And poor Robert De Niro, barely in this film. He's got three, I think, major scenes. He's fantastic in every single one of them. But if you're here for Robert De Niro, yeah, he's barely in this film. So I came in with the wrong impression of what this movie is going to be. And basically all I remembered was Mickey Rourke and Lisa Bonet make love and there's blood coming down from the ceiling. What the fuck was that even all about? So revisiting it again the other night, I have to say I enjoyed it a lot more than I did back in 1987, 88 when I saw it the first time. So I'm glad that we are going to be discussing this, and I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts, and especially how this differs from the screenplay and the book, because I know that this went through a lot of changes before it got to the screen. Even through the shooting process, there's a lot of changes.
I saw this theatrically, and I don't recall what the pull was. I think it might have been Robert De Niro. I'm pretty sure 1987, I was 18. This came out when I was still in high school, but I believe I had finally seen Taxi Driver. Robert De Niro kind of became huge at that point for me. It might have been the Lisa Bonet angle. I don't know. I watched The Cosby Show religiously and had a huge crush on her. It most likely was not the Alan Parker angle, because I had probably only seen at that point The Wall, and maybe I might have caught Midnight Express on TV at some point. And I don't think it was Mickey Rourke either. I don't think at that time, this was right on the cusp of him becoming like top pay Hollywood actor, which didn't last very long, mostly because of his own doing. I think my sister was the one that really pushed to go see this. So we went and saw it in a theater that we didn't normally go to, because this was not a huge wide release, even with the controversy. Plus, I live in a small town that doesn't necessarily get everything, even if it's a moderate success. And I was absolutely blown away by this film. It started my brief but intense obsession with Mickey Rourke, because I don't think I had seen an actor like him prior to this in this movie. And I think it's one of his better performances. Now, I say obsessed, but it really only revolves around two movies, this one and Barfly, which came out in the same year, which I saw in the same year. And then he went into boxing. Most of the rest of the films that came after this, I never really fell in love with. I know I saw Johnny Handsome. I know I saw Homeboy. None of those movies connected like these two. Yeah, this is a movie that I watched a bunch in the late 80s and early 90s. I had to check with my friend last night. I'm like, I had this on some form of media, because I know I didn't rent it every time I watched it. But I have a box of old VHS tapes. Wasn't in there. So I asked my friend, I'm like, was this one of the laser discs I sold to you back in the early 2000s? And he's like, yes, I believe it was. And I believe I was actually there at Tower Records when you bought it. And I'm like, okay, I knew I had it at some point. It's one of those touchstone films for me when I was first getting into or realizing what a director did. It was one of those movies where I was really paying attention to the composition of shots, the editing of shots and blocking and all that. And even though I didn't necessarily know all those terms, it's what I was looking for. And I found it a fascinating film in that regard. There's a lot of symbology in the movie you can catch on to, a lot of hints about that twist that you mentioned, Cullen. I've been meaning to do this episode since the beginning of the pandemic, and I mentioned it. I listened to an episode the other day of mine from early on in the pandemic to see if I had mentioned it, and I had. And I continued to mention this Mickey Rourke double feature that I was going to do on my own at the time because of the pandemic. So it's taken 2 years to finally get it going. And I'm happy to have other people talking about it, especially Cullen, you made it through the book. I checked it out early in the pandemic and got, I think, about a third of the way through and stopped and never got back around to it. It's interesting what Parker did with the book because I wasn't as enthralled with it, I think, as maybe you were.
Is that why you stopped the book, or was it just life happens and sometimes we can't finish books?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was sort of the point when I was becoming a little overwhelmed by our situation, and it didn't really sink its hooks into me. And at that time, the libraries were kind of not really open, so they weren't making you take stuff back like they normally would, and it sort of just sat on my side table for months and months. And then finally, I think I got a notification, no, we're not going to charge late fees, but, can you bring this book back? And I was like, yeah, maybe I'll get back to it when I actually do the and I didn't. So
yeah, the library cops after you.
Maybe we can live without libraries, people like you and me. Maybe. Sure, we're too old to change the world. But what about that kid sitting down, opening a book right now in a branch of the local library and finding drawings of peepees and wee-wees and the cat in the hat and the 5 Chinese brothers? Doesn't he deserve better?
As far as the differences, and this sort of goes to the movie and maybe some of the problems of the movie, I just remember what I did read. It felt to me, and of course this hindsight is 2020, but it felt to me like he lays the cards out a little more obviously in the book, Cullen. I don't know if you feel that way about the big twist. And yes, we are going to spoil this film, people, but the big twist, I don't know if we should talk about it right here at the opening. It seemed more obvious to me that the person that Harry Angel is looking for is himself.
I think it still took a little while for me to figure that out in the book. One of the big clues in the book is when he meets Louis Cyphre, the address is 666. The sort of satanic symbolism is very, very upfront in the book, whereas it's somewhat upfront in the movie.
Parker was smart in obfuscating some of the twist and the satanic aspect of it.
Though Louis Cyphre is pretty obvious as well. As soon as they introduce him, I'm just like, oh, okay, it's the devil.
Yeah, I missed the pun there with the name, definitely. But it's obvious that something is going on with him. You have multiple characters wearing pentagram pendants of some sort or another. So you get this idea, that weird shrine that Angel finds. It just felt to me like that if I had read the book, I think I would have picked up on both of the twists a lot quicker than I did with the movie.
What I loved about the book and what really captured my attention is it's a New York noir. That's one of the biggest differences with the book and the movie, of course, is the second half of the movie is in New Orleans. I think the story works really well in New York, moving between Harlem. A lot of it takes place in Times Square that's sort of run down. Some of the big clubs have already closed. He lives in Chelsea in a what he calls a rundown apartment with a patio, which, as we now know, if you want a 2-bedroom apartment with a patio around where the character in the book lives, it's $5,600 a month.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound right.
And then, going down to Coney Island. I love New York. That's where I live. That aspect of the book really, really grabbed me. And I think Hjortsberg does a fantastic job of getting the geography of the city. The first half of the movie also, just the streets, the cars, the clothes. I really felt like I was in New York in the mid-50s.
Does he go down to New Orleans twice in the movie? It feels like he heads down there 2 times.
I thought it was once.
Really? Okay.
Once he goes, that's it. We're in New Orleans for the rest of the time.
Because I was kind of confused about the geography as far as, well, first off, I'm confused about the time, though it says very clearly 1955, but I was just like, okay, something about this, and I don't know if it's Rourke and just his other roles. He doesn't feel like he's 1955. He feels like he's more 1987. I thought for sure that he had headed down to New Orleans twice. I'm just like, why do you keep going down there? So my bad on that one. But I think I would have liked it better had he stuck around just New York City as well.
I do know what you mean, Mike, and I can't remember what point it was. But after he was in New Orleans, there was a moment on rewatching where I was, did he go back to New York for something? And I can't remember what it was. So
it could be those flashback dream sequences.
That's true.
That basically take place in New York. His memories and things are, he probably hasn't left New York before for an assignment. That makes me think about the look of the film and how, for a period piece, this is one of the most successful. When the movie opens after that brief little nighttime scene where we see the dead body and supposedly, which I never caught on to, Louis Cyphre walking down the street. Parker says that we're supposed to infer that that's Cyphre because he's walking with a cane, he says later in the film.
But what gives human life its worth anyway? Because someone loves it, hates it. The flesh is weak, Johnny. Only the soul is immortal.
That desaturated look that they just achieved by painting, the art direction in this movie is amazing. They've repainted every sign on all the streets that they filmed on, and they repainted Coney Island. No primary colors was his main goal, to film in black and white, but in color. But everything still has that muted palette. When I start watching this movie, I feel like I'm in that space. That look of the film draws me in. I do like the New Orleans stuff, and I forgot about that the book takes place solely in New York.
The voodoo ceremony is in Central Park in the book, which I kind of like. I feel like that sequence in the book is almost a little comical. Not quite, but I do like the idea of after hours in New York, it's 3 a.m., you go near the lake, and it's where the voodoo ceremony is happening. And then afterwards, you get out and just go back home.
Is that the ceremony where they took the boy's soul? Or a different one?
The chicken dance, I think, is what Cullen's referring to.
Okay.
There's an extra ceremony toward the end of the book that's not in the movie.
The script had that scene, the salt mine orgy, I guess, which there are flashes of in that final dream sequence flashback that Harry's going through when he's having sex with Epiphany. And you see the writhing bodies. That was actually in the script. It was something that Cyphre was doing while he was in New Orleans, having a devil worship orgy.
Like you do.
Yeah, like you do.
Yeah, in the book, Cyphre, he also is like a sideshow magician. He has different aliases. He performs a couple times. He transforms like a young woman into an old woman and then back to young again. And then that final orgy involves, I'm curious if it's in the script, not only child sacrifice, but it's either Tri-X or Triple-X film that can shoot in the dark. And so Angel gets blackmail photos. That winds up becoming like a big part of the final conflict, which is how he gets the information out of Krusemark, is he has photographs of Krusemark doing certain acts.
The child sacrifice was mentioned ever so briefly in that scene. But that script was interesting. The things that were left out, like at the beginning, as I started reading, I'm like, who's this news vendor they're talking about? And his landlady, they talk about that body that's shown at the beginning of the film, that homeless woman with her throat slit. If this had been in there, it's obvious that this happened around Harry's apartment. And so it would seem that Cyphre is setting him up to take the fall for this before we've even met Cyphre. that is, I think, what, having said that I missed the twist, I assumed that Cyphre was setting Harry Angel up through this whole thing. Every time he goes and sees somebody, that person ends up dead right after he's seen them. So the logical thing that the cops are going to think, which happens in the film, is that he's the one that did it. That sort of sets up that noir aspect of the film where we have Angel tasked with finding the famous crooner, Johnny Favorite, who in the book and in part of the script, Harry recalls. I like that they changed that. He's like, I have no recollection of this person or his name. And again, I think they did that to make it less obvious that, okay, he's looking for himself. Also in this script, towards the end, when he has Epiphany up in his room, he mentions his fake nose for the first time. That's a part of the book also that's left out, is that, yes, Harry mentions that he was in the war and was hurt, but he doesn't say, like my face was badly damaged. And that was a thing in the book that kind of was like, he was drawing parallels between himself and Johnny a lot in the book. And it's like, okay, well, it's the same guy. But here they hide that a little bit more. And I think it's maybe smart to do that. Is it tricky or fair? I don't know, but I think it's kind of smart.
Well, that makes sense with the nose guard that he's wearing, which, I mean, we talk about detective characters and are they even capable of doing their job? And I have to say that Angel is probably one of the lesser detectives. He doesn't seem to be very good at his job. And also he is a dork so much of the time. Like when he's wearing that stupid nose guard, he looks ridiculous. He looks sillier than Jake gets when he gets his nose cut by Polanski. It's just like he's marking himself as far as like, I'm an idiot. He's really not that good at his job through a lot of this.
At the end of the book, there's a moment where Cyphre says to Angel, I thought you would have been a lot better. You should have figured this out. And who I was a long time ago, like, wasn't the name a big hint?
Oh, funny. Oh, funny.
I liked that aspect of the book.
I always took it as plain dumb, like the Elliot Gould version of Philip Marlowe in The Long Goodbye, where it's more to make the people that he's talking to feel like
they're smarter. It's a Columbo thing.
Yeah. And he has to go back, again, typical noir thing. No one is up front with him the first time he talks to them. He always has to go back and get more information, if he can, if they're not dead already.
Right, yeah.
He travels out to that psychiatric clinic where Johnny supposedly has been for the last 12 years and finds out about this Dr. Fowler.
Okay, granted, he knows when ballpoint pens were invented, so that's definitely a good point there.
They went too big on ballpoint in 43.
I remember that always sticking out to me, like, really? It's just something you think, like, oh. I probably at some point even looked it up. When was the ballpoint pen invented?
I did look it up because I was curious. And while it had been invented, I think in the 19th century, I think it was 45 or 46 when it went into mass production. And even then, according to Wikipedia, I think it was like $10 for one.
Wow.
So $10 in 1940s money.
Yeah.
If you're using a ballpoint pen, you're rolling in it.
I mean, what are you using otherwise? Are you using the old one with the nib and the ink and stuff? Is that what
That's what
doing?
He was using.
Okay.
Yeah, when he wrote down the Winesap and Macintosh and the Louis Cyphre on his... Yeah, I noticed that really this time. It's like, oh, well, yeah, he's using the old... What are those pens called?
Those are called fountain pens.
I was going to say Johnny was probably using blood instead of ink for a lot of his writing.
Another thing that struck me when I first saw the movie is the music. And I don't know how old you are, Cullen. I know Mike's fairly close in age to me, but at that time, roots rock was a big thing. And this kind of came in like right around when the Joshua Tree was released. I mean, they were released very close together, and that whole idea of another era discovering blues music and stuff. So I remember being really struck by that. Not only the blues and roots music they were playing, but that damn song that just plays throughout, that Girl of My Dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Girl of my dreams, I love you. Honest, I do. You
yesterday when I was watching made me think again of The Long Goodbye, where you have that song just play in different variations throughout. This isn't as wild as that is, but you do hear the real song, but you also hear those sax solo motifs throughout that play the tune. There's the tinkling piano that play the tune.
I thought it was so cool that they got Brownie McGee and Pinetop Perkins to be in the band, which is a nice little treat. I don't think Pinetop gets any dialogue, but Brownie McGee gets some good screen time.
Toot sweet.
Well, speaking of music and Satan, I kept thinking of another film that had come out right around this time, which was Crossroads, and just that kind of set in the past, period piece, dealing with this satanic relationship and all this. So, and that was just 86, I think that came out. So 1 year before this.
I loved Crossroads growing up. Yeah, I was born in 85, so I didn't see Crossroads till probably 90 or so, 90 or 91, but that was my Karate Kid. Like, that was my Ralph Macchio movie. For years, I wanted a pig nose and a Telecaster, and then the whole like classical guitar aspect of that movie. I grew up playing classical guitar as well, so that movie connected with me quite a bit and shaped who I am today.
Well, and that brings in the whole Faust idea here, where Harry asks, "Why do you want to find this guy?" And
Monsieur Cyphre has a contract.
That Faustian idea of selling your soul for fame, and they get into it a little bit more in the book. It doesn't seem like that many people know who he is in the movie. In the script, it mentions, he was bigger than Frank Sinatra. I know that the book implies that as well, that he was very famous and very wealthy. You never really get the sense in the film that he was that big of a deal. Like, if you're going to sell your soul to the devil, shouldn't it be, you're still on the tip of everyone's tongue?
Right. Here's this obscure singer, Here's Frankie Valli if people didn't remember who he was.
Right.
Clearly it wasn't that great of a deal.
No.
He should have specified how much fame he was going to get. Got to be specific when you work with the devil. He's clever.
Oh, you want flash in the pan status? Okay. I got that covered.
You're a one-hit wonder.
Yes.
Yeah, girl of my dreams.
On repeat viewings, I really do like DeNiro's appearances, however short they are. And I really enjoy in the reference interview where he asks to see Harry's ID.
You got references. You've been to college. You only take yeggs what's been to college. Ain't that right, Dave?
And then Cypher goes, "I'm cautious about such things."
Right.
It's like a nice little in-joke that he kind of lost track of who Harry and Johnny were. That was quite funny.
He doesn't do a whole lot either. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's more reaction. I like the scene in the Italian restaurant with the egg.
Some religions think that the egg is the symbol of the soul. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
He could have hammed that roll up so much more.
Right.
I appreciate his restraint. I really like his long fingernails as well. Which is sort of like pop into certain shots and then they kind of go below the frame line.
He just seems to be having the best time in that role. And I know he's smiling quite a bit in it. And I think that helps as far as, wow, Robert De Niro is really enjoying this. And by him having such pleasure, I'm having such pleasure watching him.
What is the relation of this and Cape Fear? I'm forgetting the year.
It feels like Cape Fear came after, because I remember seeing that theatrically, and I wasn't seeing this one theatrically. That was 91 was Cape Fear. This feels more like it's close to The Untouchables. Every single time he was showing up on screen, he was just knocking it out of the park for a long time. So, yeah, Angel Heart, the next role was The Untouchables. Then there was Midnight Run and Jackknife, We're No Angels, Stanley and Iris, Goodfellas. Like, what a run that was. Right before this, it was The Mission, his little role in Brazil, Falling in Love, Once Upon a Time in America, King of Comedy. So, yeah, just this amazing run of roles that he has for, there's a couple in there where it's like, okay, Falling in Love, Jackknife, okay, but everything else, my God.
It's a lot of different types of roles, too.
Oh, yeah. And he's comedy with Midnight Run, and The Mission is one of the most serious films that I've ever seen. So, and then like, again, kind of hamming it up in a good way in Untouchables. I mean, God, him with that fucking baseball bat.
A man become preeminent, he is expected to have enthusiasms.
But yeah, I love his look. I love the long hair. I love how he keeps it up through so much of the film. But then when he lets it down, it looks even better. And yeah, the way that he's holding that cane and those long nails and everything. But yeah, the egg scene is probably the one thing that I remember the most. And I didn't even remember the salt and how Harry has to take the salt and throw it over his shoulder. And I had never known why you do that. I always thought it was kind of a don't waste salt thing. I didn't realize it was you're throwing salt into the devil's eyes.
Yeah, I finally realized that yesterday. I'm like, wait a minute, isn't that a superstition? And it has something to do with the devil, I believe. And looked it up, and it's like, yeah, they believe that, the devil hung around your left shoulder, and salt was such a pricey commodity.
Oh, yeah.
That dropping it was a sin. So you had to do that and blind the devil before he could take over and offer you fame and fortune as a crooner.
Yes, or at the crossroads as a guitarist.
That egg scene, especially the end when he bites into the egg and you're like, oh, yeah, he's devouring Harry right now.
Is that where he says, I've got to think about chickens for the first time?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
I got to think about chickens.
Those little lines that repeat through the film tickle me. The chicken one, the I'm from Brooklyn one.
I'm from Brooklyn.
To explain away his ignorance about things. I don't know if you ever use that, Cullen, but,
Hey, I'm from Brooklyn.
I don't know much about this. I'm from Brooklyn. Or
right.
I should use that.
Are you an atheist? Yes, I'm from Brooklyn. Because everybody in Brooklyn's an atheist.
That's true. That's what you do. You go across to the big island and people are just like, what, are you some kind of idiot? And you're like, I'm from Brooklyn. Sorry. He does a lot of great things. I mean, this movie makes me miss Mickey Rourke, especially when you see just how fucking handsome the guy is. And you're just like, man, what did you do to yourself? You were so handsome, so talented. This is the kind of role that you were made for, this kind of retro, cool type of thing. I mean, every time he would do a role like this, it's just like, yeah, you are so great. And then, yeah, like you said, this was one of the last ones, right? Before he just kind of fucked himself up.
In everything that I've watched of his, it seems like he had a self-destructive ideology about himself where it's almost like he couldn't let himself be famous. In this and in Barfly that I'll be doing later this month, both directors of those films been like, he came to me with these wacky ideas and you had to like talk him out of this character that he wanted to create. Like for this one, he wanted to have jet black hair and a Cyrano de Bergerac nose, which might go to the, the fake nose thing. He probably read that in the script and thought, well, if I'm going to have a putty nose, a wax nose, I might as well go all the way.
It's totally the opposite of what you want to do when you get plastic surgery.
He had all these suits made for him, but they weren't period correct. He ends up with those baggy seersucker suits in the film, which I love. That was the other thing about this movie. It hit a style thing that was going on at that time. The pleated pants, the wide tie, that was a thing like in the mid to late 80s. I remember watching it and going, I need a wide tie like that. Not so much the suit, but it's like he wanted to set himself up for failure. And by the time he did Barfly, which was right around the same time, he was like, I'm done with acting. I'm not interested in this anymore. And he did continue to act. I mean, Homeboy came out a little bit later and Johnny Handsome and stuff. Yeah, then went off in the boxing and got his face destroyed, basically.
I talked about him in White Sands. I love his role in that. And then, of course, guys, come on, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, probably one of the best films ever made. And he just really knocks it out of the park there, of course, too.
That's one I haven't seen.
Yeah, me neither.
My sister and brother-in-law and I went to LA, I think in the early 90s, and we all swear that we were driving behind him when he was riding on a Harley. I don't know if it was him, but it sure the heck looked like him.
It's a weird movie. It's a very weird movie because if memory serves, and it's been a long time since I've seen it, it's futuristic, but you don't know that it's futuristic.
See, I kept thinking when I was watching this that I wish the ending turned out differently so there could be a series of movies about Mickey Rourke's character, because even though he's not a very good detective, he's very likable. I really like the world that he has around him, like the young woman with the calf-length jeans, and he's like, oh, your boyfriend's got a car. He seems like really surprised, and they seem to have some sort of interesting rapport. There's the relationship he has with the woman from the newspaper who gets all the background. I really like the carnies that he meets down at Coney Island, the couple where the husband is on the beach and just has all these nose guards. And then the wife is just standing in the ocean with her back to, like, you know, her husband and Mickey Rourke. And she's obviously doing something. I don't know what. But I really liked these people so much that I'm like, I kind of wish that he could have this ongoing series where he would keep going back to these people for more information about missing persons and cases. And, you know, it'd be nice if he wound up with a somewhat happy ending where he at least survived. That's not in the cards for this movie, in this story.
I'm always so curious because there was a posthumous novel of Angel's Inferno that was published, but I don't know anything about that as far as how they managed to carry on this story.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it either.
I got curious because I remember thinking, well, there's a sequel book.
Yeah.
How does that pan out? Or is it a prequel book? Did I imagine this? Because I tried to look it up last night and I couldn't find anything about it. Yeah, he's very affable in this film. And I think that was what struck me the first time I saw it, Cullen, and why it resonated so much. Those little interactions with that girl on the street, with Connie, the secretary from the Times, who in the script meets a horrible end. We don't see any of that in the film, but that Fangoria issue that I passed on to you guys last night had a couple pictures of her body that were supposed to, again, infer that Harry kills her after this and then sets her apartment on fire, which is odd. Kind of glad that's not in there.
Yeah.
She had no part in the Johnny Favorite story. They cut that out and kept the victims to the Johnny Favorite connections, to where I believe at some point that the film, and I don't remember if the book ends this way, the film, it was just he's being set up. He doesn't actually kill all these people. It's Cyphre. That works if you leave in the thing about the secretary. It works if you connect him to that body at the beginning of the film.
Well, and there's that other scene that was in that Fangoria article where Dann Florek buys it. I was so happy to see Dann Florek because he used to be kind of a big deal when I would see him show up and things. Like, he was never a big deal. Like, oh my God, this movie stars Dann Florek. But he was always so good in everything that he did. And I was kind of bummed when he just disappears from the movie. That's another thing that I'm very surprised that Harry doesn't pick up on, is that Winesap and McIntosh are both apples.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay. And then Pruitt Taylor Vince as, what is it, Deimos?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why is his partner not Phobos? Like, that would have been pretty cool too. But Pruitt Taylor Vince doesn't look like Pruitt Taylor Vince in this movie. Oh my gosh, he's so thin. And I can't remember the last time I saw him thin. And he doesn't, I could only tell it was Pruitt Taylor Vince because of his eyes. Because, you know, his eyes do that like wobbly thing.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for a close up of him. I'm like, you gotta show his eyes. That's like his thing. No, they stayed away from him, but he was great.
And I forget that this was one of his first roles because I've seen him so much since then. And he's in Barfly as well. But I don't think I noticed his eye deal until I finally saw Mississippi Burning, where he's in that a little bit more. That's why I put his name at the beginning, because I just love him whenever he shows up in things.
He is great. Yeah, I love him.
Michael Higgins is Dr. Fowler. When I saw this, I had no idea who that guy was. But, you know, more recently, seeing him in things like Wanda, I caught a little bit of that a couple months ago when it was on TCM, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that Dr. Fowler? And I looked it up. And I'm like, oh my God, it is. And he's just an asshole in that movie. He's in The Conversation. He's in Rumblefish again with Mickey Rourke. He's in Stepford Wives.
Yeah, the character actors in this movie, the smaller parts are all played by some really interesting people. And we really haven't even talked about the Lisa Bonet character. Gosh, she was, 18 when this movie came out? And she says she's 17 in the movie. And boy, is she sexualized in this movie.
I think she's a little bit older than that. I believe she's a couple years older than me.
Okay.
I was 18 when I saw it. They filmed it the year before. So she was probably 19 or so when they filmed it. But yeah, I mean, it becomes a little more troubling these days. Back then, I probably didn't think anything of it. But yeah, when she says she's 17 and you realize she has an infant already.
And then that basically he's sleeping with his daughter. But then is he? Because the little boy has the Louis Cyphre eyes. And I'm like, was it really Louis Cyphre that knocked her up? Was this one of those, supernatural births that we have?
That's what she says. She says it's during that ritual, and I can't remember the. He keeps saying Chevrolet, so that's what I want to say. I can't remember what she calls it, but it's a French term or
Chevalier or something.
Yeah. Where you're mounted by the gods.
Oh yes, I'm familiar with that, Chevrolet.
Their little interaction there in his hotel room is sort of important, and it's even more important in the script where you have a better distinction between their religion and devil worship. Gets intertwined in the film, and I think that was a problem back then for people like, and it's pretty typical of movies where they are conjoined. They took steps to separate that in the script, and then none of that stuff ended up in the film, which I get happens to simplify things, but it would have been nice to have that distinction between the two.
They go into a lot more detail in the book, because in the book there's a lot of the symbols that are used. They find them on the wall, like things written in blood. I believe it's her that helps Harry realize that, these symbols are actually gibberish. Whoever's doing these murders doesn't know what they mean, which is an interesting thing that's left out of the movies.
One of those Fangoria pictures, there's a picture of Rourke and it says something like Tellock or something behind him, and I didn't remember that in the movie. Was that there and I just totally blanked it? Okay.
No, that was one of the I think most of the pictures in that article actually are from deleted scenes.
Yeah.
In the script, it does mention that he, after killing Toots, writes that word on the wall in his blood. They mention that. The cops say, somebody decorated the apartment with the poor sap's blood.
Right.
There's no mention of any of the terminology. It comes up a lot more in the script. I think in most of the murder scenes, there is something written, or he finds things that have those symbols and he doesn't know what they mean. How much of it was filmed, I don't know.
Also, the whipped cream is missing from the sex scene, which is
Yeah, when you mentioned that in the message, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
There are little moments of humor in the book. Like, sort of the sex scene stops, and then it starts again and then stops. Like, it's clear they take a food break and go and they actually take showers and then continue. And then it's just like they go to the kitchen and get whipped cream and put it on each other.
This would have been so close to 9.5 weeks. That would have been almost comical if they had more food fucking.
Yeah, it doesn't really fit the tone of the film, that's for sure.
No.
It stands out. Something I kept wondering about is, even though this is a movie about Satan and selling one's soul to Satan and voodoo, there is a lot more of it in the book, and I wondered to what extent they might have de-emphasized that aspect of the story. Would they have de-emphasized it to make it sell better to a larger audience? Perhaps that might have been creeped out by it. You can't totally divorce it from the story.
I think a lot of that gets taken out to hit the noir angle, maybe a little bit more the detective side of the story. I think if you hit the satanic aspect of it, it probably plays the cards too soon. Some of the script that got dropped, a lot of the book that got dropped, really clarifies that Johnny-Harry connection more. Is it fair? To your question early on, Cullen, is it fair the way that they handle this? And I think, well, he meets how many people that know Johnny, specifically Margaret Krusemark, who we haven't really talked about, Charlotte Rampling, again, another great actor in a sort of small role, but she's wonderful in it. Her accent and her delivery alone.
Yeah, it feels like there should have been more of her, or maybe there was more of her.
There's a little bit more in the script, but she should have recognized, she would have recognized Johnny. She should have recognized Johnny. Her dad even should have recognized Johnny. Toot Sweet should have recognized Johnny. Spider Simpson, the guy that he talks to in Harlem, that scene got truncated as well in the movie. So he encounters all these people who would know who Johnny was. And he has a picture. Connie, the secretary, brings him a picture of Johnny. It's not shown in extreme close-up, but it's obviously not Mickey Rourke done up in makeup or something weird like that. It's another person. Is that a cheat, or does it make sense knowing what we know about Johnny, that he had facial reconstruction? By the end of the movie, when it's revealed that Louis Cyphre hired Harry to find himself, kind of a long con, why does he make him go through all of that if it's not to just set him up? Is it a cheat or does it make sense? And I kind of fall on the it makes sense side.
I think it's just one of those things that you just have to go with, and I'm fine with that. I'm okay with, I was thinking the same thing. Like, why didn't you recognize him at least by his voice? And there is that line about like, he's dead, or at least he's dead to me. And I was like, all right, is that you talking to this guy who you know is Johnny? But there were some things where I was just like, okay, I'm just going to have to buy this and go with it.
I think one of the cheats might be that he gives his birthday as Valentine's Day 1918 to her. Then immediately after, when he meets one of his meetings with Cyphre, he's like, I told her Johnny's birthday. It's not even my birthday, but in reality, it is his birthday.
Right.
They don't use Valentine's Day, but I believe in the book, he is aware that they share the same birthday. I might be wrong about that, Cullen.
Yeah.
It's another one of those coincidences that makes it a little too obvious in the book for me.
I think they changed, it was June something, which was actually Hjortsberg's birthday, versus I want to say that February 14th was actually Alan Parker's birthday.
Yeah, he admits to that, yeah.
Yeah, kind of like, I'm taking over this... And by the way, Hjortsberg was February 23rd, so that's a lie. But Alan Parker was February 14th, so a couple days apart. But yeah, I think it was Parker just like, no, this is my movie. This isn't your movie, Mr. Hjortsberg.
Well, no, it also plays with the film, the hearts, the symbols in the movie, the egg, the fans always struck me as very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I just remember when I would watch this when I was younger, it's like, oh, there's another fan. There's fans everywhere. And never really caught on to the idea that it's usually when you see a fan, that person's gonna die.
What a strange thing. I guess it's like the X's in Scarface, or then Scorsese picked it up for, what was that? The one with Matt Damon and...
The Departed?
Yeah.
Parker's got a thing with fans.
Could be.
I want to say that in the commentary, just because that restaurant where Harry and Louis Cyphre meet is where he met Robert De Niro to discuss him being in the film. And he noticed the fan. It just sort of became the symbol of the movie, and he used it to be the portent of death, as he says. And that's how Winesap meets his end, is having his head put through a big window fan. That's one of the scenes. I was trying to find deleted scenes last night. That's how I found that Fangoria article. Yeah, I would like to see that Winesap scene.
I had a question about one of the earlier premonitions when he's in Poughkeepsie, when he's letting the doctor suffer withdrawal. He's walking around and he goes by, it's sort of like you hear the heartbeat, which happens several times in the movie. He goes by a church. I guess there are nuns that are sort of in the front, or a couple of people worshiping. And then there's the rain has become blood. And it's dripping from the ceiling, which happens later in the movie as well. And then you see the elevator, which also appears in these premonitions and nightmares that he has. So I wasn't sure, is this something that he's actually seeing? Is this sort of a waking nightmare? Is this sort of some sort of hint that there's some sort of crossover between future and present? Is it just Or is it just some sort of mood that the director's evoking?
There were times where I was like, is there actually an elevator there? Is that why he's seeing this? Or is this a memory that he's seeing? I'm thinking that the elevators are actually there when he is seeing those. But yeah, it was one of those where I'm like, okay, again, you're telegraphing the end quite a bit here. You know, we're an express elevator to hell, straight down.
On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell, going down.
2.
You know what it also reminded me of, and it's just coming to me right now, is have you all read the book Horace McCoy's They Shoot Horses, Don't They?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If I remember correctly, the chapters sort of begin with this sort of the condemnation where by the end you realize it's the character's execution, his death.
Right.
And so I wondered if that's sort of what he was employing, a similar editing strategy where he's like giving you sort of little hints about what's going to be happening over the credits, at the very end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. I see them now as a mix of flashbacks and flash forwards, where the elevator, like you said, Mike, is the very obvious expressway to hell. He also sees in that when he passes by that church where those twin acolytes are.
Oh, I love that scene. I love the way they move their heads in time with each other. It's really super creepy. It kind of reminds me of almost like a 9 Inch Nails video or something.
Yeah, and then you've got the sound, the beating heart, the whispering Harry, and then Johnny. If you don't catch on to that at that point, you might miss the twist completely like I did. The little bowl that shows up in a lot of scenes where they've done cleanup for all the blood on the walls. And then there's an electric chair in there as well. Why is there an electric chair there? Well, that's what's going to end up happening to Harry. He's going to get fried.
Right.
That bowl thing just reminds me of when he first goes to meet Cyphre and they pass by that room and there's blood all over the wall. The scrub lady's cleaning it up. In the script, it's mentioned that that particular congregation is against procreation. That's why the parishioner killed themselves, because they were having a hard time with not being able to have sex. Interesting little tidbit that was left out of the film. That directly mirrors the scene of the cleanup after Harry's been killed, which we never get a full idea of. They keep showing that wide shot of that tenement with the one orange lit room with the fan in it. It's the only window that has a fan in it. And every time I see that shot, it just makes me think of the Physical Graffiti album. It's that same building. But I kind of like that that's not shown. We don't see the murder of Johnny.
Mark meant Harry, not Johnny. But does it matter?
In full detail. It's just little snippets that give you an idea and you can piece together what happened. They show the bed after the fact. There's candles everywhere. Got the cleanup going on, which we see like a couple times throughout the film. I always see that as a mix of the flashes of Times Square are the flashbacks, and then the elevator, the electric chair, that little bowl, or sort of, this is where I'm headed.
I mean, I guess we've already spoiled the ending, so I can ask this question about the relationship between Harry and Johnny. Johnny and Margaret do this ritual with this soldier that they find in Times Square that happens to have the same birthday. The idea is to kill him, and Johnny, by eating his heart, is able to transfer the souls. Johnny winds up being sent to, fight in the war. He gets brain injury. He's in the hospital. Margaret and her father retrieve him from the hospital and leave him in Times Square because, as it's explained, that would be the last memory the soldier had. So where I get a little confused is, by trading souls, did Johnny somehow lose his own memory? Did he take on the memory of the soldier?
That's a really good question.
That's how I take it. I'm always confused by the timeline. You see 1943 on the marquee in Times Square. They mention 1943. This all happened in the same year. Did Johnny take Harry in 1943, get drafted, get messed up, go to the psychiatric clinic, get taken out, and then returned to Times Square in 1940. That doesn't make sense to me. There is mention, I think, in the script of 1945 as a year. So it's like, well, was this between 43 and 45?
Right.
Or was the drop off in 43 and they picked him up earlier? You know what? That is not explained very well in the film. But I think you're correct on the timeline as far as how the events take place, Cullen. Yes, once he gets hurt in the war and has the amnesia, he doesn't remember anything about Johnny. We don't know anything about the recovery after he's let out in Times Square. How does he end up becoming a private detective? Was that what he was before? He, as in Harry, is that what Harry was doing already before he got drafted?
It's New Year's Eve, 43. So 43 is, I don't know, is 43 over or is 43 just beginning? I'm guessing that it's over and that it's about to be 1944. But when I saw the initial shots of that flashback, I kept thinking it was VE Day. So I was just like, oh, okay, this is May 6th, 1945, or sorry, May 8th, 1945. Okay. And then it was like, no, the marquee, thank you, to your point. I was just like, I don't know what this is, but there was even a sailor kissing a woman. I was just like, oh, they're kind of redoing that famous shot from VE Day. No, I was totally off.
It's New Year's, but right, like to your point, Mike, is it New Year's? Does New Year's 43 mean it's turning into 43 or turning into 44?
Right.
The date in ballpoint on Johnny's discharge was December 31st, 1943.
None of that's explained very well. And that timeline, the amount of time where this happens, I have never been clear on. I don't know if that's in the book, if it's clearer. In the movie, it is very confusing as to when that all happens. And it doesn't help that he's getting that exposition from Ethan Krusemark, and he's doing it manically and rapidly as Harry's screaming in the background the whole time at him.
He needed a victim, someone his own age.
Why?
To steal their soul. So Toots and Johnny picked up a young soldier.
Who?
Just a boy, just a soldier out celebrating New Year's Eve in Times Square.
Who is the soldier?
They took him back to Johnny's hotel, and that's where the ceremony took place.
It's hard to keep track unless you watch it dozens and dozens of times, which I have, but it's still confusing to me. Every time I watch it, I'm like, I think I have it figured out. And then I'm like, wait a minute. All they mentioned is 43, but this couldn't have all happened in the same year.
How could the devil not get into the hospital to retrieve the soul? If he's the devil, it's just like, man, they must have really good security and secretaries.
This maybe does reinforce the idea that this happens very quickly. He's taken there, and then Ethan and Margaret come and get him, retrieve him quickly. The doctor is being paid to lie that Johnny is still there. Why they don't check it out in those 12 years, I don't know. I guess he hadn't had an engagement in Poughkeepsie until then to stop by.
So I think I was mixing up him going to Poughkeepsie with him going to New Orleans. I think that's why I thought there were two trips to New Orleans. I didn't pick up on the Poughkeepsie because there was no feet picking going on.
Popeye, you still picking your feet in Poughkeepsie?
And his drive there and back is very similar to the scenes of him driving in New Orleans.
Exactly.
Very much the same kind of skyline and stuff. I love that little scene in Poughkeepsie with that actress who...
Oh, Kathleen Wilhoit?
Yeah, she always plays the kooky sister. I just know her from ER and Gilmore Girls, where she's like the nutso sister of one of the main characters.
She's that duplicitous Jezebel in Roadhouse is where I know her mostly from.
How funny. I haven't seen Roadhouse in years.
Oh, boy. That's got to change.
She's also in one of Charles Bronson's canon films of the 80s, Murphy's Law. I think they're handcuffed together for most of the film.
Oh, boy. One of those.
I believe.
I gotta rewatch it.
Yeah. I know she's in Color of Night, but I don't remember where. So I need to. It's one of my favorite bad movies. I love Color of Night.
I don't know that one.
Oh, that's the Bruce Willis, Jane March one, directed by Richard Rush, where it's a whole group of psychiatric patients and they're all in this group session together and the doctor dies. And then it's like, oh, who killed the doctor? And they're all like, they're all a bunch of kooks. Leslie Ann Warren is in there. Brad Dourif, Lance Henriksen, Kevin J. O'Connor. Yeah, the cast is freaking amazing. And I mean, I love Kevin J. O'Connor in anything, and he just shines so bright in that movie. And then Jane March, it's kind of like Lisa Bonet in this. It's like Jane March, you know, a lot of sex scenes, and it was very controversial at the time. It is very much a detective story, so I think you might dig it. It's not good by any stretch of the imagination, but I really like it.
Yeah, we should talk about Lisa Bonet, because this was, like you mentioned, the big controversy. She was a Cosby kid. Kind of funny now with what we know about that show.
Yeah.
She mentions in interviews that she went to Cosby and he was like, hey, you know, this is something you feel like you need to do it. I think once the film came out, his opinion was a little different, because she ended up being eased out of that show and given her own show.
Why don't you go over to a different world now?
Go to a different world, have your own show. We're going to distance you from this wholesome, clean-cut
show where, yeah, that is ironic.
She does fine in the film. Their interactions together are interesting. It's funny to me that most of the film is exposition. We're getting all this information. It's just how it's shot. How do you make an exposition scene interesting? Well, have the two people undress each other and prepare for coitus, you know, with that secretary. They're doing it so effortlessly. That scene just moves along. She's giving him all this information about Spider Simpson and Toot Sweet and Krusemark. It's a lot of talking. This scene at Coney Island, like you mentioned, Cullen, where he's looking for Madame Zora, and the gal in the ocean trying to cure her varicose veins is like, don't be a gazoonie. They're the same person. Madame Zora is Krusemark.
Don't be a gazoonie, fella.
Another interesting thing that got cut, and I don't know if it was filmed, the beginning of that scene is him kind of wandering through Coney Island because it's off season. And there's an exhibition. There's like wax figures all around, but they're in like murder scenes.
Oh, wow.
And one of the murder scenes is the Fatty Arbuckle.
Oh, wow.
And there's a girl's body. And he mentions to the guy that's setting up or tearing it down, he's like, oh, where's the Coke bottle? And I'm like, oh, my Lord. Wow. And I was like, holy shit. Because I was reading it going, what is this? What are talking about wax figures and this and that and the other thing? And the second he said that, I was like, oh my God, that's horrible.
So it's interesting you mentioned the exposition, because I think you are totally correct that they have to condense so much plot connections into a very few scenes, because a lot of what's cut out of the book are additional scenes of detection and conversation. Like down in Coney Island, he talks to several more people. So Margaret and Epiphany, if I remember correctly, actually talk at a certain point in the book, and Harry is like outside with like devices to like listen through the door. At another point, in order to eavesdrop on a conversation between Margaret and her father, he bribes a custodian in the father's office building, borrows his uniform, pretends to be a window washer, then goes out on the ledge, connects, and then goes over to the window, puts soap where his face will be so they can't see him, and then starts listening through the glass. And it's a wild.
So he's not inept, Mike. He's not inept. He's turned into that. And
it sounds like they were cutting out a lot of his good detection skills.
He has like a whole suitcase of like different things to pick locks. He's a little bit more of a pro. It's really hard, like thinking back, to fit all of these scenes.
Oh yeah,
into a 2-hour movie. It would be nothing but dialogue. And in fact, I do actually think a number of the key scenes in this movie, the dialogue is very similar to the book. Sometimes word for word, but it's transposed to a different, location, or they've sort of abridged the scene to sort of combine a couple key plot points. It's at once faithful, but also it's faithful in a way that it has to cut out some stuff in order to compress it, if that makes sense.
Those are the successful adaptations for me. That case, he does have the case, and he opens it a number of times in the film and presents things, but it gets simplified to his wallet, where he has dozens of fake IDs for different uses. Like when he goes to Poughkeepsie,
My name is Henry Conroy, and I'm with the National Institute of Health.
Which, of course, goes to the main theme of the movie is identity. Who is Harry Angel? He takes on all these different roles throughout the film. Maybe that explains why he doesn't know who he is. He's played these roles for so long. Even from the script to the finished film, a lot of those scenes get simplified, Cullen, like in the book even more so. But there are two different Margaret Krusemark scenes in the script where in the movie he follows her to her apartment. In the script, he just shows up there, does that whole thing, and then he follows her when she leaves to her father's house, to Ethan Krusemark's house. The whole Spider Simpson scene is left out of the film, except as he's talking into the recorder, the one time the film goes into voiceover, which you expect in a noir. That scene with Spider Simpson was actually shot. There's dialogue for it in the script. The sex scene is simplified. They leave out her explanation of the religion that they're practicing down there and how it differs. And she's like, oh no, that's just devil worship. He has a playbill that has Louis Cyphre's picture on it, and it is an invitation to that orgy in the salt mine. Which apparently they shot some of because it ends up in one of his dreams. It's like, well, that would kind of be, see, those tells of who Cyphre is or might be are left out. Those tells of connecting Johnny and Harry are left out. Obviously, the wax nose is left out, which is interesting that it's in the script at all because he doesn't mention it until the end of the film. I'm glad for that. I did notice, this was probably the first time I noticed that he has some scars on his face. Little scars on, I think, on the right side of his face that imply he also suffered a facial injury in the war. There's two Connie scenes in the script where he meets up with her. He gets a little bit of the information in the bar, and then they separate. She goes and gets more info, and that's when they have their little tete-a-tete in his room. I like the simplification of the story, and it keeps us focused mainly on Harry. And some of those other scenes would, I think the tone of that be a lot different than what we get in the finished film. I can't imagine seeing him hanging on a window washer scaffold.
Well, we should say, too, that this took a lot to come to the screen and that there were a lot of false starts with it. I mean, was this yet another project that Dustin Hoffman wanted to be involved with? It feels like every movie I've been talking with lately, it's like, oh, Dustin Hoffman wanted to be in this. But I think they had, Robert Redford at one point?
Yeah, he had the rights, I think, for a while. Yeah. I don't know what he was going to do with it, but yeah, that was one of the iterations.
Yeah, and they talked about Frankenheimer originally directing, Robert Evans producing. Yeah, De Palma. So that was interesting. On Hjortsberg's site, he talks about how Hjortsberg was working with De Palma on a treatment of a Houdini biopic, which would have been interesting. And then they got to talking about Falling Angel, and De Palma's like, oh, I would set the whole thing in New Orleans because it's got jazz and voodoo and it's inexpensive to shoot there. And probably too, because New Orleans, at least in movies, and I don't know how this is in real life, but it always looks like a very old city. You think about Wild at Heart or some of the other movies that have been shot there, even Point of No Return. And it always looks very period piece, not of the 20th century almost. So it's like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And I think they play that up quite a bit when he does get to New Orleans.
I've only been to New Orleans once a few years ago, and then there were a lot of areas that still have that period look. Even when we were talking the Walter Hill movie Hard Times,
right?
I feel like there's certain stretches of street where it's like I could almost swear that I was on that block 4 years ago, and I'm like, oh, it's still kind of looks the same. You know, cars are different, the clothing is a little different, but the architecture looks similar.
Well, I think that's why I enjoy the New Orleans scenes, because of that. It lends itself to that period. A lot of it has to do just with the salt air and stuff and how that ages things.
I think about those wrought iron railings that go around the buildings and stuff. That always just seems very old to me.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and play a few messages. and we'll be back to finish up our discussion of Angel Heart after that.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and I, we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Deaf Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production podcast network. We hope to see you online.
We are back, and we are still talking about Angel Heart. I think one of the draws, other than maybe Lisa Bonet and Robert De Niro, is that this was marketed as a horror film when I was still pretty knee-deep in horror in the mid to late 80s. But it's got that noir angle, which I was not as familiar with. As I was preparing for this and watching it over the last couple of years, I was trying to think of films that are of a similar vein, horror noir. The one movie that kept coming to my mind, which is something that I've only seen recently, is The Seventh Victim. The Val Lewton film, because it has that satanic cult angle. What are other films that fit that sub-genre?
I think a lot of those Lewton films could fall into that hybrid genre. Cat People, I Walked with a Zombie. I was also thinking stuff sort of like Nightmare Alley.
Oh, yeah.
Would have also been written in the 40s, has that sort of carnival noir. I feel like Dementia, that like 50s, sort of like an hour and 10-minute movie that's
with no dialogue. Yeah, that's a weird film.
What about that one with Denzel Washington and John Goodman? Was that Fallen or something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Because that's kind of a detective story, plus you have that whole, the devil or this demonic spirit is passing from person to person.
And then there's a couple on the comedy side. There's Cast a Deadly Spell with Fred Ward and Julianne Moore. Then there was a recent movie, I think it was called Demon Squad. It was on, I saw it because it was on the new season of MST3K. I actually, I really enjoyed the movie, Demon Squad from 2019. Shot in like Alabama, private eye, and it's a world in which like demons exist in sort of our universe. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I think they did a really good job with the effects.
I guess you could say maybe like even Night of the Hunter, perhaps.
Yeah, that definitely borrows a lot from Gothic and horror.
Or even like Lord of Illusions has some some tones as well.
Yeah, what's his name's character is sort of
Bakula, right?
Yeah, Bakula. He's kind of detective-y in that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and his name was Harry D'Amour, if memory serves. So kind of in a little bit of love for you as well.
What about Seven?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Parker brings that up, actually, in his commentary when Harry goes to Dr. Fowler's house, gets the flashlight, and is searching through the darkened house. He's like, yeah, they pretty much borrowed this for Seven. I'm trying to think of which scene he was referring to.
I had a screensaver. Remember those? You could download movie screensavers. I was like, go to the movie's website and download the screensaver, download wallpaper. That was like the big thing, right? And I had a seven 7 screensaver. So I know that shot that he's talking about with Brad Pitt or Morgan Freeman with the flashlight kind of twisting it from one side to the other. And it's like, okay, I can picture that perfectly in my head when you say that.
From a literary side, I think some of Frederick Brown's novels from the 40s and 50s sort of skew mystery but have some horror elements.
Are you familiar with Frederick Brown?
I'm not.
Cullen is very familiar with Frederick Brown is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I cut you off, Cullen.
Mike, are you familiar with Frederick Brown's work?
A little bit, but mostly through you.
He wrote a lot of sci-fi, mainly mystery. His novel, The Screaming Mimi, was made into a movie with Anita Ekberg and was famously borrowed by Argento for Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
That's a great book.
I love it. Here Comes a Candle was published in paperback recently by Centipede or Millipede, which were related imprints. And they were the people who also reprinted Fallen Angel, which is how I found out about the novel. You know, Far Cry is terrific. Knock 312. Yeah, his non-series novels have a little bit more of like the macabre horror side to them. He could also be very funny. Martians Go Home is one of my favorites, which presupposes that if Martians invaded Earth, they actually don't want to cause harm. They just stand in the corner of the room and laugh at how stupid we are. When we try to grab them, they can disappear through walls. And so they just mock us.
Wow.
That sounds about right.
It was made into a movie with Randy Quaid in the late 80s, which I still haven't found, which I'm very excited to see. It doesn't have much of a reputation, but that's okay. Have you seen it, Mike?
I remember that, and I remember it having a really good end title theme. So when I was cleaning the theater, because I want to say that came out, yeah, you said late 80s, but I think like it was still playing at the movie theater when I'm there. And just like, this is a great tune, like almost as good as Spaced Invaders, which was another Martian or outer space movie right around that same time.
I liked that one.
You mentioned that movie Fallen, and that just made me think again that even the title of the book, Falling Angel, sort of belies one of the twists.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the fallen angel? Lucifer.
Louis Cyphre. Lucifer. Even your name is a dime store joke.
I still take myself to task on not catching on to that. Like the second he writes it down at the beginning of the film, it's also funny because he can't say his name correctly throughout the entire film.
That's true. Mr. Cyphre.
Or Cyphers.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Cyphre,
Mr. Cyphre.
I'm sorry. Mr. Cyphers.
I'm going to blame it on Mickey Rourke trying to trick me into not hearing it as clearly as I should have.
I actually think I like the title of the novel a little better than the movie. The verb falling has that noir implication of, you all mentioned the elevator straight to hell, but I just like this notion of this character that's just going to keep falling further and further down.
He's doomed from the beginning, and that's why it's like, well, why didn't you just confront him when you got him there to your office? You've obviously been looking for him for a while. He's the devil. He should know that it's him, right? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's unsure. That's why it makes more sense to me in my head that they're setting him up as opposed to why does he need to realize that he's actually Johnny Favorite? Yeah, the idea of falling angel has definite dual meanings, and Angel Heart just becomes so specific to the film itself, where that's what he gobbled up when he cut poor Harry open back then.
That shot of, why am I blanking on the actress's name? Charlotte Rampling's heart.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unsettling.
Apparently a real heart, too. A real human heart.
Really?
They got it from a medical school around the area. They said, sure, we happen to have one here. Go ahead.
Might I borrow a cup of heart?
Those are things you could do in the 80s, I guess.
Would y'all put like Vertigo and Psycho into the noir horror category?
Oh, I could definitely see that, especially Vertigo, just with that whole investigation part of it when he's trying to tail her and just going in circles, and I could definitely see that. And then, yeah, I suppose Psycho has a lot of overtones of noir and more than just it being black and white.
I did a search for horror noir, and Psycho was on every list. 7 was usually on there. Silence of the Lambs was generally on there.
You know what might fit, speaking of 7th, is it the Seventh Seal, the one with Demi Moore? That one, there's the mystery to that as far as, what's going on with this, the souls and all these things. And that's got, obviously Jesus stuff throughout the entire thing. I've always enjoyed that movie. I don't know if anybody else actually thinks it's a good film at all.
I believe I saw that in the theater. I don't know if I've seen it since, though. I remember enjoying it.
I never saw, was it Seventh Sign?
Is it Seventh Sign?
That might be
something?
it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I always mix it up with the Bergman film, even though they're so different.
I mean, this conversation's been very helpful to me in terms of unpacking a lot of the narrative questions that I had. I'm very grateful for having this opportunity and both of you sharing your insights.
It is still one of those films that ends up being confusing at the end. I do want to mention the one thing, like you, Cullen, I'm on board until the end. I don't mind the twist. I think they do set it up correctly in the film. There aren't really any cheats. But the one thing that's always bothered me from the first time I saw it is DeNiro's eyes at the end. We've gone this whole time without the supernatural being pointed out to us, where, we've got this really sophisticated man in these wonderfully tailored suits with his hair all pulled back, elusive guy, and then at the end he has yellow eyes. What's even worse than that is when the little baby has the plastered over yellow eyes at the end and is pointing at him. I think Parker was like, we have to do this or people aren't going to get it.
Mephistopheles is such a mouthful of Manhattan, Johnny.
We'll take another quick break, and I'm going to do something I don't normally do and play a preview for the next episode since it relates to this one. And we'll be back after that.
So, how'd the job go?
Oh, they gave me a hard-on. They couldn't use a hard-on. This is a world where everybody's got to do something. Somebody laid down this rule that everybody's got to do something. They got to be something. A dentist, a glider pilot, a narc, a janitor, a preacher, all that. Sometimes I just get tired of thinking of all the things that I don't want to do, all the things that I don't want to be, all the places that I don't want to go, like India, like get my teeth cleaned. Save the whale, all that. I don't understand that.
You're not supposed to think about it. I think the whole trick is not to think about it.
That's right. The Mickey Rourke Love continues on the next episode when Heather Drain and Anthony King join me to talk about Barfly.
Hello, my friend!
Cullen, what is going on in your world right now?
I am prepping for NoirCon, which will be virtual this year from October 21st to 23rd. It's okay that I'm plugging that?
Absolutely.
There will be lots of panels on noir-related film and movies. If anybody's interested, please go to www.noircon.com to check it out. And Mike, you are also involved with NoirCon.
I will be there. That's for sure.
Very cool. And Mike, what are you laying out for us in Shocktober this year?
Shocktober's got a lot of classic monsters. We've got one zombie film, 2 vampire films, and one which is a slasher of sorts. So it almost sounds like a normal group of Shocktober films until you think that we're covering some little bit of things that are outside of our purview. So I hope people will enjoy it. If they want to hear any of the stuff that I have going on, come on over to www.projectionboothpodcast.com.
Can you tell the name of the slasher, or are you keeping it secret?
It is Office Killer, starring Carol Kane.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is an interesting film directed by
Cindy Sherman.
Yeah, I saw.
I'm surprised you know it because, man, I sure didn't know it before we went into this thing.
Yeah, I watched it within the last couple of years. I saw a Cindy Sherman exhibit when I was in London and was just like, wow, this is fucking wild. I don't know if I heard about the movie then, if they had, that in her bio or something. It's one of those movies that is not very widely known. I don't know what I saw it on. It might have been on Shudder at some point, I think.
And I think it was playing Criterion for a hot second as well.
Okay, if it was on Criterion, it might have been on Canopy then. They have a lot of their catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where I stumbled on it. Interesting little strange movie. And where can people find you, Cullen?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to find me, pulp-serenade.com does not get updated as often as I would like. CullenGallagher.com gets updated a little more, which has links to articles that I write when they're published.
And you can find me at wakeupheavy.com. Along with Mike, we're part of the new Weirding Way network, so you can find that at weirdingwaymedia.com. A whole slate of shows are already available on there. That is all via Spreaker. And you can find the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks to you two for joining me today. Thanks to everyone for listening. And I'll see you next time when we talk about Barfly. And don't forget,
anything can happen when you wake up heavy.
Don't be a gazoonie, fella.
Girl of my dreams, I love you. Honest, I do. You are so sweet. If I could just hold your charms again in my arms, then life would be complete. Since you've been gone, dear, life don't seem the same. Please come back again. And after all said and done, there's only one girl of my dreams. It's you.